Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today, alongside our managing editor, Mark Maynard, our life issues reporter, Tessa Redmond, and our content editor, Chip Hutchison. Hello to you all. Good to see you all as we record here on a Wednesday afternoon. I want to start today not with a big kind of hard news story, but with an important one, a very important one. Kentucky Baptists continue to demonstrate that we are truly together for the mission of reaching Kentucky and the world for Christ. Chip, as you wrote this week, April was an incredible month for the cooperative program.
Yes, it certainly was. $2.3 million in April were given by Kentucky Baptist to the cooperative program, and the implications of that are so great because that's what funds disaster relief. It funds Sunrise Children's Services. It provides for 6 solid seminaries. Clear Creek Baptist Bible College, Oneida here in Kentucky, and so many sources where to fund gospel work and to spread the good news of Jesus Christ to not only Kentucky, but to the ends of the earth. This was the second highest April in cooperative program history in Kentucky. 2008 was the only year that has surpassed it, and it was only by about $20,000. So we're just so thankful that Kentucky Baptists are faithful to give. And so when you give knowing what your money goes to, what a blessing that is, and what an encouragement that is to continue to give. And we want giving to be biblically based. We see what Jesus said about the woman who gave the 2 mites. I mean, she gave all that she had. And so Kentucky Baptists are really doing well in giving to fund gospel advancing work.
And, you know, that money to me, the giving just reflects an attitude that our Kentucky Baptist churches, the pastors, those in the congregation, Mark, they are realizing that we can do, and this sounds cliche, but it's really not, we can do more together than individual churches can do separately.
That's exactly right. Lawrence, I think more churches are becoming even more aware of what the cooperative program does. They understand that it goes to help the seminaries. It goes to these BCMs. It goes to a whole lot of things. And I think they're starting to see that and starting to see the value in that. In
nearly 4,000 missionaries.
Exactly. Whatever they give, just adds on to whatever somebody else gives. And, when we all give together like that, you see what will happen. And it's just been, it's been a great year for the cooperative program, really a great couple of years where the funds have come in. And, we're so thankful for that because we know what it does. And we know the outcome, from all these donations from these churches and Kentucky Baptists.
Well, we can't say thank you enough. That's the bottom line here is we're grateful for what Kentucky Baptists are doing. We pray to steward it well, and we encourage people to continue, not just to give through the cooperative program, but there are other missions offerings as well. Lottie Moon, others, Broadus offering, lots of others that they're contributing to as well to fuel the work here in Kentucky and throughout the world. So our bottom line of this story is thank you. We really appreciate what Kentucky Baptists are doing. Well, let's go from the sublime to the ridiculous, maybe. Mark, tell us about a preacher who was arrested in Europe for preaching and teaching and the Kentucky Baptist Convention connection there.
Yeah, it's 6 degrees from the KBC, right? I guess it's kind of interesting that Danny Davis, who was a former AMS in the Tates Creek Baptist Association, was good friends of this preacher in Northern Ireland named Clive Johnston. And what Clive was doing was he was around an abortion clinic, but he wasn't preaching about abortion. He wasn't preaching against it or anything like that. He was sharing John 3:16. the famous, one of the most famous verses in the Bible, probably, and maybe one of the most quoted verses. But of course, one of the most important verses too. It just tells the whole gospel story right there. So he was doing that, and he was charged with. They said he couldn't do that because he was on the buffer zone, and we've talked about that with our abortion clinics even around here. Tessa's written several stories about that. He was in that zone, I suppose, and even though he wasn't talking about abortion, he can't preach, you can't do the open air sermon there. So he was charged with that, and he has a criminal record. And he was fined. It was 450 pounds. I had to look that up. That's $600 in American money, which is a pretty hefty fine, I think, to be honest. He's appealing it. And the way Danny knows him, Danny knew him from many years ago when Danny was a pastor in Virginia. And his church knew him and of him, had a revival with him. And the association there partnered with him. Danny and his wife have been over, Sandy, I think is her name, had been over to Northern Ireland several times, and they were great friends with Clive and his wife Sheila. So this really hit home to him, and he thought, oh, he's going to get off because this happened 2 years ago, and they kept kicking the can down the road and kept saying, we'll get to this later, and he thought maybe they were thinking, well, this is ridiculous, they're going to drop it, but they didn't. And an organization called the Christian Institute in Europe has taken up his cause and is helping him with the appeal. And we'll see, there's more to this story later.
Well, and it's not just the fine, it's the principle of the thing.
Right.
If they're able to do this, then they'll keep doing it. Not just Northern Ireland, but in other places where, in fact, it's already happening.
Yes, it's a religious freedom issue, really, that you have to be able to speak of that. And that's what he said. And, Northern Ireland, as Danny pointed out to me, is a Protestant area, really. You would think Catholic, and the Republic of Ireland is certainly Catholic based, Catholic dominant, but not Northern Ireland. So this is a really interesting case, and I'll be surprised if they don't throw it out, to be honest. I mean, they're getting a lot of flack, obviously, from, at least entities over here. I don't know about what they're getting in Northern Ireland, but it's an interesting case for sure.
I don't know Northern Ireland, but if Northern Ireland is like the rest of the continent, like the rest of Europe, it may have been Protestant historically, but it's probably more secular now than anything.
Yeah, that's probably true. We'll see how the court case goes, though. I think it'll be interesting to follow, and hope to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, we ran a story this week, Tessa, about the closing of an abortion clinic in North Carolina. That's a good thing. But it points to, doesn't it, a larger, kind of more unsettling trend about abortion in America?
It does. The clinic, they said that kind of a lack of interest, or just not as much interest in that area really led to the closure of the clinic, as well as more interest elsewhere. A Woman's Choice, they're the people who run that particular clinic, and they've got other clinics in other areas of the Southeast, including Florida and Virginia. And some of the people who are on the ground there, including church members, they had said, the influx of abortion pills and the fact that women don't need to go to a clinic to get them is just it's a nationwide trend that we're seeing, right? And so that is impacting abortion clinics. Brick and mortar clinics are closing, but that doesn't mean that less abortions are happening. And I think this clinic closure in Greensboro just highlights that. It's a good thing that this clinic is no longer in that community, but that doesn't mean that abortions aren't happening in that community anymore.
Yeah, and in fact, there are continuing efforts, the KBC included in that, to try to convince our legislature to take further steps to keep mifepristone, these abortion chemicals, out of the state. And our Attorney General, Russell Coleman, is taking steps to try to do that. He's teaming up with other pro-life attorneys general to take action in the courts, Tessa.
Yes. So we talked last week about this ongoing case from out of Louisiana challenging the FDA allowing abortion pills to be prescribed through the mail. And Kentucky, our Attorney General Russell Coleman, he's joined in that effort in asking the High Court not to allow the FDA to allow abortion pills to be dispensed that way. The attorneys general said in their brief that states have a legitimate interest in regulating abortion and in protecting their citizens, both born and unborn. And the way that abortions happen in our country now with the mail order is people out of states where abortion is illegal. Providers from California, from New York can prescribe these pills and ship them to Kentucky. So women are able to access them in states where abortion is illegal, like Kentucky, like Louisiana. But then those providers, there's also shield laws which protect those providers from extradition and prosecution in breaking the laws of other sovereign states. And so our Attorney General has joined in that effort alongside about 20 other states, a little more than 20 other states, in asking the Supreme Court to stop mail order abortions. And just earlier this week, the Supreme Court extended their stay on that lower court ruling that we talked about last week through at least Thursday. So abortion through the mail is still legal through at least Thursday, but we're going to be seeing whether tomorrow, if the Supreme Court weighs in on that issue.
Also, we should mention the resignation of the head of the FDA. He stepped down under pressure, and he's been accused by pro-lifers of kind of slow walking reviewing regulations about mifepristone. So we don't know who's going to replace him on a permanent basis, but perhaps someone who's more likely to take the necessary steps, because these pills, as we know, are dangerous to women and 100% fatal to children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mark, our Attorney General Coleman's been busy. He's also trying to put the brakes on so-called prediction markets. That's really gambling by another name, isn't it?
That's essentially what it is. You know, it was formed through the federal government, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and basically online prediction markets like Kalshi and Polymarket, like he talks about in his letter that it actually involved 40 different attorneys general. So you can see it's an issue not just in Kentucky but elsewhere. But it basically allows the user to put money on the outcome of almost anything. I mean, you can put money on tonight's NBA playoff game between the Pistons and the Cavs. You can put money on who the next president will be. You can put money on if the government will confirm there's the existence of aliens. You name it, you can put money on it. And the thing is, these markets have no state oversight, and that's just how they operate. And even in states that ban gambling, you know, unfortunately, Kentucky does not ban gambling, but that's a whole nother story. But even in states that do ban gambling, they are active. And it's raising a lot of concern among bipartisan politicians. And you look at the attorney generals, like I said, there's 40 that have signed on to this, and 6 signed on to the letter that Attorney General Coleman sent. And most of it is related to sports gambling. You know, Kentucky, we've had the Kentucky Racing Commission since 1906 to regulate horse racing and to regulate, you know, gaming. And that's a long time. We've done this for a century plus, and I think we know what we're doing with that. And that's kind of part of the issue. You know, they're allowing them to not go by the rules, to go by their own rules, and to not use our rules. And these attorneys general and even legislators have, you know, talked feverishly about this because they see themselves losing money on gambling. Imagine that. But anyway, and we're not here to promote any gambling. Trust me. None of us are gamblers, and none of us will ever be gamblers. And we've written a lot about that. But this is an issue. It's an issue in Kentucky, and it's an issue really throughout the United States with 40 attorneys general. You know, that's bipartisan for sure.
You talk about the prediction market. Some military members got in trouble a couple of weeks ago because they were going to be involved in the raid on Venezuela, and they put some money in the prediction market that there'd be an attack on Venezuela, and they won a lot of money. And of course, now that's been discovered, and they're being disciplined. But Chip, you've written a lot about gambling, so this is, you know, wherever sin can find a way, it'll find a way.
It will. And what's so troubling about this is, as Mark said, there are situations you can bet on anything. It's not just sports, it's anything political. And with the situation about the military, they had advanced knowledge of that they were going into Venezuela, so they capitalized on it allegedly. But if it raises what we have talked about ad nauseum of the graft and corruption that's involved in the gambling industry. We've seen it in the sports world. We're going to see it in everything else. If you know something's going to happen, well, it's not a prediction. You're taking advantage of the market, and I think those cases of abuse, of fraud, of greed and corruption, they're only going to just multiply in the days ahead unless something can happen on regulating this prediction market.
Well, here's something that even complicates things, guys. The federal government is setting up blocks so states can to block the states from regulating these prediction markets.
Yeah.
And the prediction markets have brought in more than $13 billion in transactions every month. So we're talking big business, we're talking big business. And, the other factor is with the regulations that we have in place, they do have protections in for people who are getting in trouble with gambling, there are some things that are set in place that are good that we like to see. But anyway, something's got to happen with this. We'll see how it goes. They obviously the letter says they want to ban them, from being able to do especially sports gaming in these states.
Well, I am scheduled to interview Attorney General Russell Coleman tomorrow, and if that takes place, we'll plan to use some clips from that in next week's podcast. But he has certainly been busy on behalf of Kentuckians to try to control some of the corruption, potential corruption that comes with these vices. Well, lots of attention being paid to an outbreak of what's known as the hantavirus, broke out on a Dutch cruise ship. And when we think of a virus outbreak, we think automatically of what? COVID. But an infectious disease expert from here, Norton Healthcare here in Louisville, says this is not COVID. This is what's called the Andes strain of the hantavirus. And the danger, he says to the public, is very, very low. Let's listen.
So the concern for the general public about this virus is that if you were on the cruise ship, you should be concerned, but you're already being monitored. Everyone else who's not been on that cruise ship should not be worried about hantavirus or the Andes strain of the hantavirus, because the risk of getting it currently is extremely low, because you would have had to have been either on the cruise ship or in very, very close contact with someone who was on that cruise ship. And all of those patients are being monitored by the public health authorities.
So again, experts are telling us that it's hard to catch, hard to spread. But I think part of the issue here, and you guys can weigh in on this if you like, do you think there's still some leftover mistrust of public health officials because of COVID?
Oh, I definitely think so. And I think that's one of the big issues with this, and when we look at this, oh, nothing to see here, kind of thing. So we'll see. I hope that's true. I hope there is nothing to see here.
Yeah. Well, I hope that too, that let's face it, COVID changed the way that we look at all these reports of upcoming viruses. Every year we get about flu's going to be worse this year. Take your flu shot. Well, COVID changed all that when, as Mark said, you got to have trust in the guidance that you're given. And it was such an earth-shattering virus that impacted so many people. Everybody's leery now. All you have to hear is virus, and people just immediately think the worst. I always say we live, the Bible tells us we do not live with the spirit of fear, but the COVID put fear into people's lives. I'm thankful that we as believers have a stronger hope, and that is the hope of that we have in Jesus Christ. So I think for believers, it's more difficult to get upset in many cases, but still, I think there's always that looming thought: is this going to be another pandemic? And I'm trusting that what we're told by the interview you just had is accurate, and we have no reason to not think it is not accurate. So everybody needs to rest assured that it should not be a problem.
Tessa, you're the mom of a little one. Does this kind of thing, post-COVID impact your decision making about vaccinations?
Not necessarily. I think I'm just staying the course. I mean, I will say, when I saw the story, there was like that initial fear, like, oh no, I remember reading early reports, of COVID in China, and it was not really a big deal, localized issue, and so there was a little bit of fear that initially struck. But then, I'm glad that you did a story like this, because it's good to continue to do research and across the news spectrum, right? Seek out experts and again, just bring those anxieties to the Lord. We are called to cast our anxieties on the Lord because he cares for us, right? We're not called to sit in that, because in Christ, that hope you were talking about, Chip, we have a peace that passes all understanding, even in issues of viruses. So I am thankful for that hope that we have.
Indeed. Wise words there. Well, Mark, one of our top trending stories this week continues to be on our website. The top story was one you wrote about a church in eastern Kentucky and its visit from the Public Broadcasting System, PBS. What's that story?
Yeah, not too many times you see PBS coming into churches when you think about it. But what happened there were a couple of church members who worked for Unite, Operation Unite, which helps a lot of people in eastern Kentucky. I mean, thousands and thousands through the years who are addicted to drugs and different things and having all kinds of issues. Two of the people that that volunteer with Unite are members of this church, Virgie Baptist Church. And the one lady that they interviewed, one of the ladies said, I do this because of my faith in Christ. And they said, well, where do you go to church? And she told them. They said, well, what can we come? So they hurriedly called their pastor, Thomas Reed, and I'll let the video or let the audio tell the rest of that story.
Yeah, I talked to Thomas Reed and asked him to tell me more about his church being in the national spotlight on short notice.
This reminds me of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. It says, always be prepared to give answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, and PBS is helping us do that, I think. And now they're going to edit some things over the last few days following Kim Tackett around, but their filming is the hope in action right here in eastern Kentucky.
Talk about getting your church ready for this national TV crew to come to your Sunday service.
Kim Tackett asked me on Friday. So she asked me on Friday, and I was excited. I was excited. I said yes, and then I conferred with the servant leaders here, the deacons, and they was all in as well. So I sent out a message to our congregation. I put it on social media. I had our servant leaders call their deacon family ministries and advise them what was going on. We even had a section for those who were not comfortable to be on camera. And I thought that was important. But, it was just a normal worship day. There was nothing new, nothing extravagant. It was just a normal worship day, and just an opportunity to show the love of Christ and share the love of Christ, even beyond the walls of the sanctuary.
What do you hope comes out of this experience of having this national TV crew, PBS, in your service?
My prayer is that someone will be affected, not only by the life change of Operation Unite here in eastern Kentucky, but that someone would come to life by believing in the way, the truth, and the life, by believing Jesus Christ is the ultimate. That's the greatest decision, right? That's the greatest decision.
Now, there's a pastor who has his eye on the main thing, using this as a gospel opportunity for the gospel to be preached outside his walls. So that he wouldn't panic, that's for sure.
Yeah, he was ready. He was excited. You know, when I talked to him, he told me that same thing, how excited he was when they said, is it okay if they come? And he's like, sure. And then he wasn't really thinking about what maybe everybody else would think about that. But obviously his leadership agreed with him, and you know, all is well. You know, that church, Lawrence, is a little church, but they have opened their doors to disaster relief, you know, teams that have come in there through that, you know, horrible flooding they've had, you know, over the really 2022 and then last year as well. And for people who come to work and do things, they've opened their doors for them, and they've been a good neighbor, and that's a good witness too.
And it will not be until probably next year until this segment airs. Right. But I asked him how many people were in the PBS crew. He said there were 2. So we know that there are at least 2 who heard the gospel that day who probably had not heard it before.
That's right. And that's amen to that. You know, it doesn't, you hear it once and that's enough. You can get it. So let's hope they did.
Yeah. Well, Chip, I want to end by welcoming a new member to our KBC family, a staff family, our respected Kentucky Baptist pastor coming on board to help us strengthen our relationships with other Kentucky Baptist pastors and churches.
Yes, Dwayne Norman will begin June 16th, and he's going to take the role of assistant to the executive director. And his primary goal is, as you said, is to work with pastors, visit across the state to encourage them, see what needs they have, also to promote the cooperative program. And Dwayne Norman, is pastor of Campbellsville Baptist Church, has been in that role for 7 years. The church has flourished under his leadership. It's become really an evangelistic tool within that community and reaching out. Of course, Campbellsville, any university town is appealing to a pastor because you have so many students there, and we know that's the lost generation. But he's done such a great job, and just a short time that we have had the opportunity to interact with him, he's very personable. He'll do a great job in that role. I've offered help for him in connecting with Western Kentucky pastors. I volunteered Mark to help him with Eastern Kentucky pastors, and he is following Michael.
I guess, Tessa, you guys can help with Central Kentucky pastors. That covers everybody, right?
Absolutely.
Well, yes, and
yeah.
And with him being in Central Kentucky as well, we got you, we got Tessa, so I think we've got it covered. Mark would also double it with Northern Kentucky, but you know, he follows Michael Cavill. Michael was in that role coming here to do that from Versailles Baptist Church, and Michael's done great in that. He moved to be evangelism team leader, where he is already making an impact there. So we're really excited for Dr. Dwayne Norman to join our staff, and he is so excited about it, and that's something that's so encouraging to us, and he cannot wait to interact with pastors just to help them, seeing how he can encourage them. So I think it's a great move for us as well as for him.
It's always bittersweet when a pastor leaves a church, especially after a successful run like he has had. But he can take those skills now and spread them across the state and impact lots of different churches. But we certainly need to pray for Campbellsville Baptists as they begin their search for a new pastor. We know God has a man in mind for them. We just pray that they find him pretty quickly and he's able to get in place there and continue to work there at that church. Well, we're tapped out. That's enough. We've talked about a lot today, but thank you for watching and for listening. Please tell others about KentuckyToday.com. And for more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention and the cooperative program that, as you heard, makes all of this happen, go to kybaptist.org. Until next time, Lord willing, we'll see you then on the Kentucky Today podcast.